Zamore. The name of the book is The Sacred Table, Creating a Jewish Food Ethic. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to be with me here at the Miami Book Fair. Are you speaking? Are you on a
Yes, I
panel?
am. I'm doing a presentation at 3 p.m. today.
Okay, and what's the presentation about?
Well, I'll be reading from the anthology, The Sacred Table, and talking about the broad themes that are in the book.
And it is an anthology. You have a lot of different people represented and a lot of different thoughts represented in this book. Could you give us an understanding of, as I was beginning to read it, I wanted to understand the term Reform Jew
Mm.
and also kashrut.
Mm-hmm. Keeping kosher.
Okay, so keeping kosher is the same, the term is the same?
Right. That in Hebrew it's kashrut, and in English you would say keeping kosher.
Okay. So could you give me an understanding about when I see the terms Reform Jew, what does that mean exactly?
Absolutely. Reform Judaism is one of the branches of Judaism. It is a liberal branch, and it is the largest branch of Judaism in America, represented by 1.8 million Jews. Um, and there are about, oh my goodness, 8 to 900 Reform congregations. I'm a Reform rabbi, and this book is published by the CCAR, the Central Conference of American Rabbis, their press division, CCR Press, and therefore it's written from a liberal perspective, although it has a lot to offer to anyone.
And I have a particular interest in keeping kosher, the sacred table, in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
dietary restrictions and things like healthy eating, nutrition, and family and bonding, and the spirituality of eating together as a community and all of that. So I found it very interesting. I want
Mm.
to understand why this is so important now and why you're seeing so much interest, it seems, right
Mm.
now.
Well, our nation certainly is involved in such a rich, deep conversation about food, food preparation, and food production. One of the nice things about Reform Judaism is that it's a liberal movement that explores the intersection between modern life and Jewish tradition, and therefore has a lot of flexibility for the realities of life. And so many of the members of the Reform movement, just like many Americans today, are reading Michael Pollan, Mark Bittman, Barbara Kingsolver, and we are thinking about the same broad issues. But what's interesting is that Judaism, from its roots, from thousands of years ago, has much to say about all these things that we consider modern thought. It's really about getting back to basics. And keeping kosher is the Jewish system of eating. And Reform Jews may or may not keep those traditional laws. My guess is when you would go around and talk to anyone as an individual, you would find out that they actually do keep some level. But the book is about not having one cookie cutter. It's about exploring ritual and ethics all together.
What is the term food justice? I hear that a lot. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure that I understand it in totality. What does that mean exactly?
Food justice is a very broad term. It's a very important term. Food justice can encompass many important values, making sure that the poor of our nation and the world get to eat, but not just get to eat appropriately. You and I may have the means to integrate healthy fruits and vegetables, fresh things into our diet, to maybe even stretch our budgets to include things like organics, um, fair trade coffee, meat that is raised humanely if we choose to eat meat, same for dairy and eggs. But the poor don't have that luxury. And really, talking about food justice is, on one hand, thinking about not only getting food to people who need food, but also thinking about the quality of that food. It's also about thinking about how food impacts our environment. Most of the food that we Americans eat, and unfortunately with globalization, more and more the world eats, is cheap. It's really cheap, both in the for it, but also in the content of that food. Most food has the price externalized, meaning that the ultimate cost of that cheap food has an additional cost that we don't see in the price that we pay for it in terms of our health, the environment, and the health of the workers who produce that food from the time it comes up from the ground to the moment it gets onto our own plate. So food justice has to do with all those issues intertwined.
So how are you, for the average person with a family
Mm-hmm.
and a very busy life,
Yes.
how are they to absorb all of this and make decisions in the market that will follow along a proper food ethic?
Mm-hmm. It's a continuum. It is not about jumping into the deep end of the pool and hoping you'll be able to swim. Um, what I hope that the Sacred Table does is we have over 40 authors who are speaking in such engaging voices, educating people, inspiring them. It allows a beautiful buffet of choices to be laid out in front of each individual person, and to pick from that buffet, thinking about the rituals, the ethics, the spirituality of food, the joy of food, which is also important to mention at these moments, and to pick and choose as their reality allows them to. Not everybody is going to be able to do everything in this book, but I'd hope the average person could take the basic level of kashrut, which is that every time we pick up the fork, we have the ability to pause and think before we eat or purchase food, and to embrace some level of ethic or ritual that helps us to improve the world in that moment. And to know that the fork has a great power, that our power when we pick up that fork or we make that purchase of food, that we really can shape ourselves, our households, and our world. And so just to pick something and then, maybe 6 months from now to be able to stretch it. It's really up to the individual where they start. And what's nice about the book is that we talk about a process of evaluating where are you now, what do you aspire to, and how are you going to take those first steps.
Do you think that this discussion is more immediate in the Jewish community than others, only because, and I don't mean to offend, but I'm going to mention there are a lot of holidays that are centered around feasts and food and bringing family together. Do you think that this topic radiates more among the Jewish community than possibly others?
Well, I really can't speak to that because this is my own community. I
Mm-hmm.
would hope every community is engaged in the same conversation of basically um, how do we have meaningful experiences with food that are positive for ourselves and the world. But Alan King, the comedian, of course, is the one who quipped that the whole point of Judaism is, well, they tried to kill us, now let's eat.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so Judaism definitely is very much entwined with eating, and those beautiful family moments around the table. But this is also about every day. And interestingly enough, Judaism, the counterpoint to all that eating is we also do fasting.
Yes.
Most people know about the Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Repentance
Right.
that just occurred in the last month, a month ago, in which we reflect on our behavior. And part of that is over 24 hours of fasting, no food, no water. Passover, people may be familiar with. It's the time of year when we eat matzah,
Mm-hmm.
and we abstain from eating those things that are leavened, like bread and pasta and pizza and cookies and cake, and we make different versions of those things, which are based on this flat matzah. So Judaism is very much about eating, but also about the counterpoint to that is sometimes not eating and shaping our eating, not eating pork, not eating shellfish,
Mm-hmm.
if those are the things you choose for your kashrut, your personal kashrut.
A lot of symbolism in the things that are selected to eat, how they're arranged on the plate. A lot of thought goes into the source of the food.
Mm-hmm.
Also, bringing people to the table who may not necessarily believe what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
Very open table. some of the discussions in the book are about vegetarianism, food allergies, a lot of very current issues, um,
Yes.
things that may or may not be considered a religious practice, right? So this is not a religious book.
Well, it is and it isn't. The point of Reform Judaism is that we have one foot in religion and one foot in the modern world.
Okay.
So each of those topics are tethered to our tradition and show how our tradition can inform us and inspire us in those topics. The essay about food allergies is very interesting. Westfield, New Jersey, the congregation there, Temple Emmanuel, um, became aware that there were many people who could not eat at their social hour after services for whatever reason. They had diabetes, they had a food allergy, and they created a section, a isolated table with prepackaged things, all labeled for all the different food needs that they knew about. And they called that the Shulchan Shalom, the temple of, the table of peace. And but the discussion that Doug Sagel has, Rabbi Sagel has, when he talks about this issue, uh, refers back to the Pharisees in the temple in Jerusalem that stood in Jerusalem in ancient times. So you get a little bit of history, a little bit of inspiration from our past, but informing an issue that everybody is struggling with, whether it's our public schools, our private schools. How do you have a kids party these days with peanut butter, not peanut butter? Why is it that our nation especially is struggling with these food allergies when some nations don't seem to have any difference in their diets today?
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. They're very current issues, but again, tethered in tradition.
Tradition,
Mm-hmm.
and it celebrates the the idea of educated choice
Mm.
across the board.
Absolutely. That's the backbone of Reform Judaism, is the idea that each one of us needs to educate ourselves and make those choices. For some Jews, your listeners may be familiar with with a friend, a family member who is Jewish, and maybe in their house they have one practice, and then outside of their house they may have a different. They may not eat pork products in their house, but outside of the house they eat whatever they want. From our perspective, that's a beautiful thing. Actually, it's not hypocritical. It's embracing the idea of holiness in the house, and at the same time of creating a modern lifestyle outside of the house. And the action in the house shouldn't be devalued in any way. In fact, it should be celebrated and say, wow, look how that person's devoting their religious practice in this way.
Does your book provide? This is a ridiculous question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
That's
Uh,
fine.
does your book provide more answers or more questions?
Uh, I would say both, actually. It's a good handful of both. It's not a book that pontificates, so in that sense, it opens up discussion and questions, but at the same time, it's really urging people to take positive actions, and to make those educated choices, and not to and really to say, well, this isn't mine to make, but rather to say, engaging in the conversation, engaging the choices is what I'm seeking.
The name of the book is The Sacred Table: Creating a Jewish Food Ethic, edited by Rabbi Mary Zamore. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara.
Have a wonderful time at the fair.
Thank you. I will.
Bye bye.